Hello everyone, this is Ukraine today. The armed forces of Ukraine have launched a counteroffensive at the hottest spots on the front line. Ukrainian drones have attacked 2 Russian oil refineries at once. Recently, the defense forces have destroyed almost a fifth of all the oil facilities in the occupying country. The Kremlin will send several thousand more soldiers from the DPR to fight in the war against Ukraine. Putin is testing the unity of the North Atlantic Alliance. Estonia is invoking Article 4 of NATO in response to new provocations from Russia. Meanwhile, Poland is planning to deploy French nuclear weapons on its territory. At the same time, Kremlin mouthpieces continue to threaten Europe and NATO with their Oreshniks and Poseidons. We'll discuss all of this in more detail next. My name is Fyodor Shirenko, and let's get started. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and also support us with a comment and let us know the city or country you're watching from. It's very important. Ukraine has launched a counteroffensive at the hottest spots on the front line. Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived at the front lines. He will meet with Ukrainian heroes near Dobropilya and Pokrovsk. Following the meeting with the personnel and commanders, the president of Ukraine stated that the armed forces of Ukraine are moving into a counteroffensive.
This week, we are conducting one of our counteroffensive operations. Guys, well done! In the Donetsk direction, near Pokrovsk and Dobropilya, there are fierce battles, but we have managed to inflict significant losses on the Russians. In fact, our forces are preventing the occupiers from launching a full-scale offensive in this direction, which they had been preparing for a very long time and were counting on heavily.
As part of the Dobropilya operation, the Ukrainian army has liberated 160 square kilometers from 7 settlements. Commander-in-Chief of the armed forces, Oleksandr Shirsky, reported that hundreds of Russians have been taken prisoner near Dobropilya. And in the Pokrovsk direction, Russian losses have increased several times over. In the past few days, more than 2,500 occupiers have been eliminated. Of these, more than 1,300 were killed. More details about the situation at the front in the report.
Ukraine is changing its tactics at the front, which allows the Ukrainian army to go on the offensive. The Russian Federation is executing its own soldiers who refuse to participate in operations. The meeting with the Pokrovsk group cost them their leadership. Everything that happened at the front today, watch now. The Ukrainian armed forces are changing their tactics. This has been noted by many military analysts, including former intelligence officer Mykola Malomouj. According to him, thanks to the fact that our armed forces survived due to strong defenses, they have now started to use flanking maneuvers. Most of the settlements along the entire front line have already been liberated. We
are now moving to a mode of operations that allows us to bypass and break through strong defenses and to take over abandoned settlements. Yes, the armed forces are holding out in certain settlements, but in just a week we have already systematically liberated several settlements. We are clearing out abandoned settlements from the flanks. It is very important that these new tactics allow us to act unpredictably for the armed forces. They cannot concentrate strike groups or build a defensive line. They are not able to use all of this systematically for defense. That is why the new elements in our operation are already allowing us to achieve sectoral tactical results now. But they are being felt.
First of all, it is important to note all of this in the context of the Ukrainian armed forces operations in the Donetsk region, which remains the main focus for the Russian armed forces. Despite having more than 100,000 troops, the armed forces note that they have cleared settlements and at the same time organized 2 settlements for the armed forces. Ukrainian
armed forces cleared settlements in the Donetsk region, continuing to hold the remaining areas near Dobropilya and Silin. In the event of further advances, Russian forces are already present in the settlements. 2 settlements of the armed forces were rotated in the settlements with the settlements above, with supplies, due to the presence of the armed forces.
Despite their settlements, Ukrainian armed forces also held out in settlements that have survived over the past few months. Pokrovsk, after all, the Russian Federation is now forced to disperse its forces and has significantly reduced pressure on the northern outskirts of the city.
Pokrovsk today is clearly the #1 target for the Russians during this offensive. Accordingly, today this has not been achieved, and overall we should probably talk about the Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad agglomeration, which has slowed the enemy's advance. Let me remind you that it is mainly the 51st Combined Arms Army of the Russian Federation fighting here, reinforced by a large number of units, including those that have already arrived from the Sumy region. Then they were redeployed to Zaporizhia, but they didn't stay there long because it was urgently necessary to provide support. And today they are trying to do just that. Those units that managed to, well, pull off this flash mob in Dobropilia.
At the same time, another support for our fighters in Pokrovsk the day before came from the Air Force, which very successfully attacked a command post in Donetsk. Footage of the strike on the Russian headquarters has already spread.
Across the internet. Meanwhile,
The Ukrainian command notes that the Kremlin itself may soon change its tactics, especially in the battles for Pokrovsk. The small assault groups that tried all summer to capture this stronghold did not achieve the desired result. Therefore, Moscow may abandon its strategic ideas in favor of intensifying regular meat grinder assaults.
having failed to achieve its goals, the enemy will likely try today, among other things, first to deploy its mechanized component, and accordingly may even attempt a frontal assault.
But there are fewer and fewer Russians willing to attack head-on. The main intelligence directorate reported that the number of deserters in the occupiers' units has increased significantly. At the same time, the Russian command has decided to either execute or torture such soldiers.
I thought they wouldn't catch me. Soon for you, bravery will get you fucked, really. You'll be lying around with broken arms and legs as bait. And that's what will happen to everyone who abandons their comrades in battle. All of us will get out of here someday. Those who survive, but there will be no mercy.
Analysts also note a significant success by the Ukrainian armed forces in the Sumy region. After Russian paratroopers and Marines were withdrawn from there to reinforce the rear, the remaining forces simply aren't able to withstand the pressure from the defense forces.
Just east of Tetkino, Ukrainian forces are gradually pushing the enemy back across the state border, that is, to the north. There, the border runs with Russia to the north and Ukraine to the south. Not long ago, the Ukrainian village of Kondratovka was liberated in this area. Now it's the turn of the village of Alexevka. The Russians admit that, in general, they will likely lose this settlement soon, but they are still clinging to it. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces have encircled this village in a pincer movement and are preventing the Russians from supplying their militants.
At the same time, experts believe that similar operations may soon increase, especially considering recent insider information from the US. For example, the Financial Times reports that the United States will send 33,000 AI-powered drones to Ukraine by the end of the year. According to forecasts, these UAVs will be used in so-called swarms and will be able to independently coordinate attacks on Russian positions.
Unable to achieve success on the front lines, Russian terrorists are resorting to strikes against Ukrainian civilians. At night, Russia launched more than 600 attack drones, cruise and ballistic missiles at civilian targets. During the day, a missile with a cluster warhead hit a residential apartment building. In total, 9 regions of Ukraine came under attack. At this moment, 3 people are known to have been killed and more than 30 wounded. Ukrainian heroes from the air defense forces shot down 583 out of 619 enemy targets. While Russia strikes civilian infrastructure and peaceful populations, the Ukrainian armed forces are imposing sanctions on the Russian oil industry, which the Kremlin uses to finance the war. Overnight, the Ukrainian drone sanctions package struck an oil refinery in Saratov. Drones also reached the Novokuybishevsk oil refinery in the Samara region. It is located thousands of kilometers from the front line. Together, the refineries in Saratov and the Samara region processed more than 15 million tons of oil per year. Overall, Ukrainian drones have disabled almost a fifth of all Russian oil refining. That's why the aggressor country is facing a prolonged fuel crisis. Here are the details.
And it's all thanks to the Ukrainian armed forces drones, which have already knocked out a sixth of oil refining in Russia.
Wow, that was definitely a hit.
Here's what it looks like.
The line at Melneshna, right out on the street. I can't even leave because of this line.
It's like a frenzy here.
It's a frenzy of frenzies.
It's a frenzy squared. Comrades, what's going on? There's no connection. Telegram isn't working. WhatsApp isn't working.
I came to the gas station to fill up, but they said they're out of gasoline. Now they're only giving it out with coupons. What do you mean with coupons? What's going on? Have we gone back to the Soviet Union?
There are already gasoline shortages in more than 20 regions.
Here, we've also started having gasoline problems because of the strike on Kamenchev. Akinsky, right now, to get your car fixed here, you have to, I don't know, stand in a line a kilometer long. That's about 60 to 70 cars at the whole gas station, and when you finally make it, there's no gas left. In
occupied Donetsk, there is no 95 octane at the gas station, and fuel prices are much higher than in Moscow.
There's no water in Donetsk. Now, in many places, there are no gas stations at all, or only 85 octane is available. People are making do with whatever they can.
Residents of the occupied cities of Ukraine face restrictions both on the length of the line at the gas station and on the amount of fuel you can buy at one time using rationed cards. For the most part, fuel is unavailable in settlements that were occupied by Russia back in 2014. In temporarily occupied Mariupol, there is also a gas crisis. The shortage is growing rapidly and there are long lines at gas stations, sometimes lasting 2 to 3 hours. In Severodonetsk, Luhansk region, including at the gas station, only 2 buses are available several times a day. Olga says that at the gas station, including for gasoline and diesel fuel, people have to wait in line for 3 to 4 or even 5 to 7 days to get supplies. In Russia, they continue to face crises, with the possibility that seasonal fuel prices will rise and tourist activity will decrease. But as we can see, Ukrainian drones are proving to be more effective than any plan from the Ministry of Economy. Another target was hit, the main facility in Russia's Leningrad region. The Kinev refinery is among the top 10 in Russia and processes 21 million tons of oil per year. It produces gasoline, diesel fuel, and aviation fuel. And here is the Ryazan oil refinery, that is Rosneft.
The facility was operating at a good pace.
It processes more than 13 million tons of oil per year. Back in August, 2 units there had already been completely destroyed after previous strikes, and now the entire plant is operating at half capacity. Journalists calculated that in 2025, drones struck Russian oil refineries 38 times, and 24 of these strikes were successful. Refineries were shut down for repairs, some units were damaged, or even all fuel production was halted. 5 plants have already been shut down: Kuibyshev, Novokuibyshev, and Syzran. Rosneft facilities as well. The most affected were the Volgograd refinery and the Afipsky refinery.
This is fire at Russian army terminals and depots.
The fuel crisis also hit the Russian budget as gasoline sales became unprofitable for companies. After all this, even in the Russian remote regions where Ukrainian drones haven't reached, there is also a fuel crisis. Putin does not comment on the situation because he is pursuing it. The Kremlin can no longer provide compensation from the state budget to the companies. This year, Russia has a budget deficit, and as of today, it already amounts to 5 trillion rubles. Thanks to Putin, who started the war.
Donald Trump stated that his administration is actively working to end Russia's war in Ukraine. The US president is confident that his engagement with Chinese leader Xi Jinping will help put pressure on Putin. During a conversation with journalists in the Oval Office of the White House, Trump noted that after his talk with Xi Jinping, China would also join the process of peaceful settlement. Putin is testing the unity of the North Atlantic Alliance. Estonia is invoking Article 4 of NATO in response to new provocations from Russia. 3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets, carriers of Kinzhal missiles, violated Estonian airspace and remained there for more than 12 minutes. In response, the alliance scrambled several Italian F-35 fighters based in Estonia as part of Operation Eastern Guardian. The Lithuanian Minister of Defense believes that these measures are insufficient. He cites Turkey as an example, which in November 2015, without hesitation, shot down a Russian Su-24 aircraft that had violated the Turkish border near Syria for less than a minute.
The NATO border in the northeast is being tested for a reason. P.S. Turkey set an example 10 years ago. Food for thought.
There aren't enough American Patriot air defense systems for everyone. The US is winding down the sale of American air defense systems abroad. The Pentagon is no longer accepting new orders. According to Estonia Across the Atlantic, the newly established US Department of War has acknowledged a shortage of Patriot systems and is now rejecting purchase requests. In particular, a multi-billion-dollar deal is now in question. Currently, priority is being given to supplies for the American military. For Europe, this is an alarming signal amid the war in Ukraine and the growing threats from Russia. The continent could be left without a key air defense system. The alternative to the American air defense umbrella is European nuclear weapons. Poland is hoping to host French nuclear weapons on its territory. Let me also remind you that on Wednesday, President Nawrocki emphasized that his country should have its own nuclear capability, both civilian and military. More details to follow.
In Warsaw, this is not just an analysis, but also a willingness to acquire military weapons that could change the rules of the game in Europe and send a message to both Moscow and Brussels.
This statement, which the president made, came shortly after an unprecedented attack by Russian drones on Poland. And although this time dozens of drones were reconnaissance drones that did not pose a direct military threat, many in Warsaw continue to fear that the attack will be repeated and that next time they will be strike drones.
To solidify nuclear cooperation, Poland is preparing to sign the Nancy Treaty, a document intended to deepen collaboration in the fields of defense and security. And although Nawrocki admits that it is still too early to talk about this, his position is clear. Poland intends to participate in nuclear sharing.
The undeniable fact that Poland is now beginning to seriously consider its own active participation in potentially receiving nuclear weapons from its key allies clearly demonstrates the significant and escalating level of profound concern that currently exists within many Central European countries, primarily due to the deeply unsettling and ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, and also because of the Western leaders' apparent lack of a comprehensive understanding of precisely how they can actually effectively stop this devastating war in the foreseeable future and robustly counter Russia's aggressive and expansionist ambitions, which are quite alarmingly, actively and consistently supported by Beijing. And there is a growing and profound realization that if Putin's unwavering determination to continue the protracted war against Ukraine indefinitely is not effectively stopped by concerted Western efforts, and with very little hope indeed placed on Donald Trump, then this devastating war will inevitably keep taking on new and dangerous forms, and eventually will certainly cross Ukraine's sovereign borders.
Poland's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, arrived in Kiev along with a delegation from the Ministry of Defense and the country's armed forces. On the agenda were our military technical cooperation, further support for Ukraine's defense, and the overall security situation in the context of Russian aggression.
Now we see that one way or another, this is direct evidence not just that Ukraine needs to adopt Western military experience, but rather the reverse. That NATO countries themselves need to adopt a significant part of Ukraine's experience in waging war, modern war, real war, which no longer fully aligns with the textbooks taught at the best NATO military academies, with all due respect to their experience. And this creates for us, this is actually an additional marker of mutual dependence.
Warsaw and Kiev have also agreed to cooperate in countering drones, sharing information about aerial threats, and implementing technologies for the rapid deployment of reconnaissance and strike drones.
A possible analysis by Russia, a kind of reconnaissance to see how Europe would act in the event of the outbreak of an armed conflict. So, for example, if Russia were to seriously violate the airspace, then which NATO response forces could be mobilized, what they look like, from where and how many of which aircraft take off. But in other words, just to understand the framework of the response. If Russia is indeed conducting such an analysis at a serious level, then, well, that's a sign that we really need to prepare for a serious armed clash between Western and Russian armed forces. Even regardless of what happens with Ukraine, whether the war in Ukraine ends or not.
At the same time, Poland is launching an unprecedented rearmament program. Its expenditures are enormous, including combat aircraft and helicopters, a wide range of armored vehicles, tube and rocket artillery systems, modern air defense systems, and munitions. At the same time, Warsaw is actively ramping up its own weapons production. In addition, the country has planned a record defense budget for next year, 200 billion zlotys, or about $55 billion, which amounts to approximately 4.8% of GDP. Furthermore, efforts are underway to significantly increase the size of the armed forces from 200,000 to 500,000 personnel. The Polish authorities consistently emphasize that the country is utilizing all available resources to guarantee its own security.
The Kremlin wants to bring another 100,000 North Korean soldiers into the war with Ukraine. Putin's chief propagandist, Vladimir Solovyov, spoke about Moscow's plans for Kim Jong-un's troops. He admits that Russian soldiers are unable to defend the borders and suggests replacing Russians in the border areas with North Koreans.
And for the calm areas, don't make anything up. Just station them along the borders of the troubled regions. And then deploy our freed-up units to tackle other tasks. Then Ukraine will advance, and NATO will start planning operations against the armed forces of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which, in full accordance with the treaty signed between our countries, is present on the territory of the Russian Federation.
And since we've touched on the topic of Russian propaganda, I present to you the main trash from Russian television. A collection of nonsense that pours into the eyes and ears of ordinary Russians against the backdrop of their hopeless everyday life.
The concept of external democracy, particularly as it pertains to the Great Duma, represents a significant aspect of political governance. This Great Duma, a pivotal legislative body, plays a crucial role in shaping external democratic policies and international relations. Its functions extend to deliberating and enacting laws that influence the country's engagement with the global community, embodying principles of external democratic representation. The repeated mention of Duma emphasizes its central and enduring importance in this political framework.
The rhythmic and resonant sound of Duma, 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 Duma echoes, creating a captivating and continuous auditory experience. This repetitive yet engaging vocalization establishes a foundational beat, a persistent and compelling sonic presence that fills the space with its unique and memorable cadence. It's a profound and unwavering vocalization that resonates deeply.
Duma now. Children in schools will be told that their own contact will be better, brighter, and will go into special effects. So Hollywood laughs nervously at the landings.
Our contact is very open. All countries and countries, as many as possible. This show was one of the highest in the world, created from all the latest achievements in society and technology, and I'm not afraid to say it. There are special effects that even Hollywood can only dream of now.
And of course they believe in presenting the country to the shaman. Well, who else could it be? A few people are waiting to hear the song I Am Russian one more time.
Our country is represented by the singer Shaman, also known as Yaroslav Dronov, who also participated in the voice show on Channel 1. We are very glad that our contestant performed at such a high level, and that it was he who was selected by the organizing committee to represent Russia in this first competition.
And of course, in the classic scenario, if something explodes somewhere, it means that Russia is attacking again, even when Russian drones have landed in the field. And it seems this will be conveniently attributed to a planned Ukrainian action.
They are attacking Russia because of Ukrainian actions in the Special Military Operations Zone. They stayed in one place and moreover, they survived. They survived in their own country. And then Zelensky doesn't like this. They come up with these kinds of events like what happened in Bucha, for example.
And every time it's the same story. Reality is what they show on TV, and yet it's all fake.
Let me be very clear. There are no drone launches happening over Polish territory. And the reason for that is because we simply don't need to do that. Now, if the other side feels that they need it, well then, by all means, they can go right ahead. They are perfectly free to fantasize all they want about such things. It's just fantasy.
He lost his arm at the front, and at home he's losing everything else. The compensation for injuries, which is guaranteed by law, is being squeezed back by the judge, the police, the very system that's supposed to protect.
Officials, please look into this matter. In Ussurisk, in the city of Ussurisk, in Primorsky Krai, I had to pay about 250,000 because of the judge's collusion with criminal elements. I had 150 left. Ruf Kubaliev was helping me deal with them at that time. We tried to get the money back, the bracelet and so on, the gold items. But he didn't help, yet he took 150,000 for it. I paid.
At parades, they shout about honor and respect. On TV, they show heroes, but in real life, they finish you off at home with paperwork, extortion, and cynicism.
Servicemen coming back from there, we come back, damn it. And here we're met by thugs in Ussurisk, in Vladivostok, and so on. And here I am, damn it, I fucking lost my hands. I came back and they're shaking me down for money, damn it. And it's always been like this here in the Far East.
And Margarita Simonian surprised everyone again. She compared today's repressions to the history of the 20th century. Under Stalin, people were imprisoned en masse. Under Khrushchev, they were released. And now the survivors who had children and grandchildren. And attention, the final chord, this time we'll have to finish the job.
You know, I remember my mom told me. I was little, it was the early 90s. And she said back then that in Poland it was scary to speak Russian, but it was even scarier in Western Ukraine. Under Stalin, they were imprisoned by the thousands, in droves. Under Khrushchev, those same thousands, those same droves, were released back. Is that right? And back then they were just left unfinished, not completely dealt with. So this time we'll have to finish the job.
That's all for today. Thank you for watching until the end. Subscribe to our channel, leave a like, and also support us with a comment and let us know the city or country you're watching from. This is very important to us. See you soon. Glory to Ukraine!